real quick to introduce this part of this to this segue out of historical type stuff, because we're not here to talk about abortion necessarily in so much as we are here to talk about abolitionism, abolition. One of the characteristics of all AHA conferences and so on and so forth is that we take it for granted that it's wrong to like scrape a human being into pulp. And so we don't spend a lot of time like saying it's wrong because of their size, their level of development, all that kind of stuff. But to introduce it, it's because every age has its evils, every age has its abolitionists. It's on the back of our shirts, that's like our original like slogan. It's not really sticky because it's a lot of just normal words, but that's like the true thing. When I read Thomas Clarkson, I thought, wow, this is like, I can't even remember why I bought the book. Actually, I was trying to refute something about Darwin being an abolitionist, so I bought this book. But last historical thing here. This is from page 27, the second to the last page of the introduction to the history of the abolition of slave trade. As the contemplation of the removal of this monstrous evil should excite in us the most pleasing and grateful sensations, so the perusal of the history of it should afford us lessons. So reading about the history of earlier abolitionists should afford us lessons, which it must be useful to us to know or to be reminded of. For it cannot be otherwise than useful to know the means which have been used and the different persons who have moved in so great a cause. It cannot be otherwise than useful to us to be impressively reminded of the simple axiom, which the perusal, that word actually means detailed study of, not something got weird in the English language. The study of the history of the abolition of the slave trade will particularly suggest to us that the greatest works must have a beginning, because the fostering of such an idea in our minds cannot but encourage us to undertake the removal of evils, however fast they may appear in their size or however difficult to overcome. It cannot again be otherwise than useful for us to be assured, and this history will assure us of it, that in any work which is a work of righteousness, however small the beginning may be. How many people are here? Or however small the progress may be that we may make in it, we ought never to despair. For whatever checks and discouragements we may meet with, no virtuous effort is ever ultimately lost. And finally, it cannot be otherwise than useful to us to form the opinion which the contemplation of this subject, slavery and its abolition, must always produce, namely, that many evils are still left among us, and they may, by a union of wise and virtuous individuals, be greatly alleviated, if not entirely done away. If the great evil of the slave trade, with its 100 interests, has fallen prostrate before the efforts of those who attacked it, what evil of a less magnitude shall not be more easily subdued? He ends his preface to his work of history by saying, I'm writing this for future abolitionists to encourage them. The only thing wrong he got in this whole thing, the only thing wrong is he says, what evil of a less magnitude shall not be more easily subdued? The abolitionists of slavery, British or American, had no idea that we would be aborting children. That was beyond them. Slavery was as bad as it could get. Abortion wasn't on there. But Clarkson, every age has its evils. Every age has its abolitionists. So, going very quick, abortion. Our nation is full of the blood of innocent men, women, and babies, full of adultery and concupiscence, full of blasphemy, darkness, and woeful rebellion against God, full of wounds and bruises and putrefying sores. That applies to today. Why? Because it wasn't slavery, it was the evil. It was slavery for him, but every age has its evils, every age has its abolitionists. They were a little more eloquent than we are, so we could actually rewrite that. So you got the evil of human slavery, and we have the evil of human abortion. This is something I'm not doing. This is abolitionism 101. Forgive me if this is too simple, but I am not saying that abortion and slavery are the same thing. I'm not making an analogy. Abortion and slavery, same thing, ergo, we should abolish it. It's not what I'm making. Now, abortion and slavery are in the same category, sin, national sin, and individual. And they are in the same category as evil. And they are, to quote Harriet Beecher Stowe, abominations in the eyes of God. I added the S, abomination in the eyes of God. That's what abortion and slavery are. They're both abominable, evil acts, and they both ought to be abolished. But the situation, even though we're not making, the reason we call ourselves abolitionists is not because it's neat. It's not because slavery and abortion are the same thing. But let's look at the situation that we face, because we face a similar situation. In both situations, we've got dehumanization. The dehumanization of slaves, the so-called chattel principle. You could justify the stealing of men and the working of them to death in your plantation by dehumanizing them. You could make them 3/5 of a person, or you could make them non-persons, or you could make them humans lower on the phylogenetic evolutionary tree. You could do all sorts of things. But the key to getting away with it in a nation that considered itself Christian, believing in the image of God, was to get that image off of them. It's the same key for abortion. We all should know this. The background for it, of course, in that time was racism. There was slavery of all different kinds of creeds and colors in the world, but the peculiar institution in America, which we draw most of our relation to, was racism. It was the color of their skin, the country of their origin, and the particular thing that makes abortion so easy to dehumanize people today is ageism. Thinking that a human being at an earlier stage of development is less human than... It's a way of actually getting around the category of thing that they are. They're humans made in the image of God. So it is ageist and evil and wicked and abhorrent to Christianity to say basically like a 20-week-old fetus is somehow more human than a 2-second after conception zygote. That's ageism. The thing that keeps abortion legal today, makes it acceptable, makes people tolerant and apathetic, is ageism. And that's what worked for racism, worked for slavery. People didn't want to abolish it because they didn't want to deal with sharing the streets or the jobs with African brothers and sisters. It's an attack on the image of God. They're both an attack on the image of God. You have Genesis 9:6, and I can't remember, it's Exodus. Genesis 9:6, you can't kill a man if you can't kill humans. Not because every human has the right to life. That's kind of an enlightenment thing. But because no human has the right to kill another human. God alone can do that. Slaves were made in the image of God, and to put a slave in servitude was to put Christ in servitude. To treat a man like a beast was to treat Christ like a beast, so on and so forth. They're image of gods. They're both denials of the incarnation of Christ. That is why it's like, am I not a man and a brother? Because Christ had made of all people one blood, one brethren. And then, of course, the abortion issue is a denial of the incarnation of Christ in a much more insane way, which we will get into. But they're both denials of that. They permeate all of culture. They're brutalizing to the slave owners. They debauch society. You couldn't buy a sheet in America without supporting the slave system. You can't buy coffee. Every single electronic device in this room, if you guys are into like boycotting things, all your Macs and all your PCs, that money, some of it goes to Planned Parenthood, right? It's permeated everything. Everything's caught up in it. And everything's infected by it, especially the apathy in regard to it. If you wanted to make a case that we've lost our salt, It's the permeation of child sacrifice. So there are similarities. They're both condemned in the Bible. You'll find people, good people, that still try to make arguments that slavery was okay in the Bible and blah, 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 you know. Usually they're just trying to be good biblical scholars, but sometimes it's because they're apologizing for their fathers who persecuted the abolitionists. And they will say things like slavery wasn't bad, so on and so forth, and that the abolitionists were exaggerating, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the abolitionists didn't say slavery was not ever talked about in the Bible and could not be done in a certain way. They said that slavery as it is, Theodore Weld's book that inspired Uncle Tom's Cabin, slavery as it is was man-stealing, which, according to Moses, was a capital crime. Stealing a man could get you killed. They're condemned in the Bible. And what is particularly involved here in slavery and abortion and why they are abominations, why they are classed as an abomination, is just because the dominion of man over man. It's a human being having dominion over another human being, which God alone has. And so, the stuff we know, the world dehumanizes people in order to justify their oppression and destruction. And clearly, abortion and slavery are direct violations of the first and second great commandments, right? You're supposed to love God and love your neighbor. Glorify God, help your neighbor. The whole law and the prophets are summed up in these, that you do that. Every slave stolen from his country and worked to death or killed on the high seas, whatever it was made in the image of God, and he was your neighbor. You were commanded to love him and glorify God in whose image he was made. Every child aborted is the same situation. Slavery and abortion are similar in that the people fighting them are known for fighting just that thing. William Wilberforce is known for being an abolitionist of slavery. But William Wilberforce, don't quote me on the number, but it's like 72 different causes. It's upwards, many different causes. He gets known for the abolition of slavery. He doesn't get known for being like one of the founding members of the American Tract Society, where he's pumping all his money into America to make sure that poor Irish farmers that are coming over have the gospel. He doesn't get known for these things. He gets known for that particular evil. And of course, the abolitionists in Britain and in America always connected slavery to rape. This is what Elijah Lovejoy got shot in the chest 5 times for doing. He kept on printing that the South was a brothel, and the evidence for it is walking all around among us. He was talking about mulatto children, the sons and daughters of slaveholders. So, like slavery was connected to rape and economic oppression, injustices and stuff, all the other things that Christians today who are not abolitionists are willing to fight because, they are. It's connected to all those things. Abortion is the same way. Pornography. Every time you're looking at pornography, you're supporting abortion. You really are. Prostitution, sex trafficking, adultery. This is just a sick cycle. You're trafficking. I was in Atlanta, and a literal, stereotypic pimp, with fur and crocodile skin shoes, gets out and he's walking his trick into the abortion clinic, and we're all calling out to them. They're getting abortions. You can't have a porn industry if all your women are pregnant, so on and so forth. And these girls a lot of times are trafficked, so on and so forth. But it's all interwoven. When you're fighting abortion, when you're fighting any evil that's in this little cycle of debasement here, you're doing it. It exploits and destroys women. Abortion does. The pro-lifers are right. It destroys women. Enslaves and corrupts men. It shatters families. It leads to the abuse of children. It transforms clinics, health, doctors into killing centers, hospitals into houses of horror, doctors into assassins, and mothers into murderers. My small argument there at the bottom was that these practices are aborting us all. And if you were to study all the abolitionists of slavery and their imagery, you always see this ripping apart of the family. If you were to actually look at the memes of AHA and the stuff that we write, that's what we're concerned with too. Abortion is defiling the whole nation, a nation full of blood, as the prophet Isaiah. So abortion and slavery are both opposed by the same people. That is what I'm saying. Abolitionists now and abolitionists then are the same people. The only luxury is right now we're called moral busybodies, fanatics, incendiaries, insurrectionists, so on and so forth, and they don't have the history. I mean, I have literally been called a fanatic and told and called a wolf and a false prophet and removed by people who read books about William Wilberforce and Dietrich Bonhoeffer. The only difference is that right now we're the ones being persecuted and not the ones that the sons of those who persecuted the prophets are persecuting today. So, abolitionists are those who refuse to go with the multitude to do evil, and we seek the redemption of man from the dominion of man. Because no one has the right to kill a child. The particular evil may change. Abolitionists will remain the same. Why? Because abolitionists do not come from us deciding to have some kind of pet fetish fighting some kind of particular evil. They come from God rising up people, and we are just in line with His providence. So, the definition of abolition is not predicated on slavery. When you see a dictionary that says that, it's hiding a simple fact. We could have done a lecture on the first abolitionists. We could have had Brian Wagner speak on this, that abolished abortion and infanticide early on. They had a different symbol, and you can find it today. It's become cheapened to the point that no one would actually shoot someone in the chest for having a Jesus fish on the back of their car. But back in the day, when they were rescuing children from the trash heaps and riverways of Rome, this was incendiary. The am I not a man and a brother thing is kind of cool today, but back in the day, you would be persecuted for that. And then today, we have new abolitionists. We're seeking to abolish abortion, and we will do that. But there will be some other evil, unless the Lord wills that there is not. And our children don't have to deal with anything else. Let's get practical. What does abolitionism look like? What are we trying to do? Remember when I read the Declaration? We shall organize anti-slavery societies, if possible, in every city, town, and village of our land, send forth agents, yada, 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 yada. This is our situation. There's a chasm in our culture. It's not between pro-lifers and pro-choicers. That's not what I'm talking about, at least. It's between, go ahead, those who have moral opinions and those who take moral action. Those who are hearers and those who are doers. That, people who listen, teach, preach, read, vote, give, in line with an opinion, and those who do all those things but then take action. There's this chasm. When Wedgwood had them design the am I not a man and a brother symbol, it was to, well, we'll get to it. It was to make it not so mysterious. Who's for abortion? Or who's for slavery? Who's against slavery? I'm confused. Not anymore, because there's a abolitionist symbol on her hairpin or on his snuff box or whatever. It's very clear. They lit up the darkness. They made something that announced them. The early Christians, drew fish and stuff, but at this point, it was the am I not a man and a brother. So that's what we've done, and we've started as we've seeded the culture. Now, we didn't make it. Well, I've got some pictures. We didn't use the cute baby like being wrapped in an American flag with like butterfly wings and like a claw of an eagle or whatever. We didn't go with any of that. We were a little more savvy about the symbol that we used, and we went with something a little more edgy, the abolish human abortion thing there. I don't think I have to talk much about it and what it stands for. But the symbol, which is the thing that we used on Facebook, in coffee shops, and so on and so forth, was just the thin edge of a wedge, if you will, that we have used to get people out of that divide. So we started, Toby Harmon, for instance, he's like, it was the symbol. I was at church, we were in a little round table thing. Round table at this church we used to go to is where a bunch of Christians get together and practice debating each other on various things that they'll never talk to lost people about. But I was in there and I had a abolitionist symbol on. Huh? Yeah. Oh, coffee. It wasn't a button. It was a coffee mug. There were AHA coffee mugs back in the day, y'all. But just like, what is that symbol? I want to know. And I'm just like, man, all right, good for you. Look it up on Google. Couldn't find it. We started putting it on light poles and on our shirts and all this kind of stuff. And we just thought we'd just do it in Norman and maybe it would spread. God was sanctifying a number of people at the time. But that was not the key to what we were doing. It's what we used to bring people in. So we started making pro-life memes against abortion with the AHA symbol on it. And people, it may have been the words of the pictures or that they were made on the advanced program of pages. It may have been those things too, but people want to know what the symbols was. And we used that symbol to start spreading this ideology of abolition, to establish abolitionist societies. Abolitionist societies are the key to what abolitionism looks like. So to reignite abolitionism, this is what we did. I'm doing history of 2011. We started a group. We met. We had, I had elder approval. We had in a church. We started meeting on at night and coming up with just people getting together, going, abortion's going on. They're killing image bearers and neighbors every single day in our city. What can we do? Like, what does Christianity look like in a culture that kills its children? I don't know. And then we talked about it. We came up with things, whether they're signs or bake sales or yard sales or whatever. We came up with ways to oppose it, and we reignited abolitionism, somewhat intentionally, but somewhat on accident, because we were just doing it where we were at because we loved our neighbor. But then somebody in Ohio and somebody in, Tennessee or somebody in Florida or somebody in Portland or wherever saw it and said, I'll replicate that. And so what's going on now is there are abolitionist societies popping up all over the planet. And those abolitionist societies are the dissenters, the radicals, the fanatics that are coming in, and they're filling that gap between moral opinion and moral action. We'll later get into it because that should be the church, right? We'll get into why that might not be the case, because I do think it's the church. I do think you guys are part of the body and bride of Christ. But when we come in, we are, I don't know if you've been paying attention to this, because you might just think I'm against abortion. That's why I'm here tonight. But a lot of people are here because they are against apathy about abortion. Or they're against merely having an opinion about abortion. Or they're against, sitting on their hands and they want to do something. And it's because they're part of these groups that don't fit into that category. So that's what the abolitionist movement is. It's come, bam, into it. Moral opinion, moral action, these things are, if you notice, we're pretty pugnacious about just having a personally pro-life opinion. We're even pugnacious with just taking action, really. We want you to have societies and ideology. Comes in, it's been spreading. It's spreading. And what's happening, and what the whole scheme, we'll get into stages maybe, but the whole scheme has been seed the culture, let it flower and spread, and people who formerly held just an opinion will join in the abolitionist movement. People who were taking action, but maybe not under certain ideology that we'll get to, will join it, and we will spread out And I don't know if you noticed geographical space, and the reason I designed it this way, we can grow and edge out those that are personally pro-life to the point where everyone who's taking action is unified in one movement to actually abolish abortion. Now, those who have a moral opinion will always be here. You'll always be frustrated whenever you email all your friends and say, hey, I wish there was something better to do, but we're going to go hold signs. I don't know. We're just going to expose evil, you know? There are always going to be people who are like, man, I agree with you, but that's your calling. And they have an opinion. We'll get to their opinion and whether that's valid or not. But there will always be those people, and God love them. After we abolish abortion, they'll say, we held that position too. They will. Abolitionist was a derisive, derogatory term until, slavery was abolished. And then everyone was like, oh, yeah, I was one of those. And then the Garrisonians humbled themselves and were like, I'm pretty sure that you defriended me on Facebook, but I'm pretty sure. So the way to abort abolition will be, I made these slides today, and this is what God's been dealing with me and other leaders in abolitionist societies and in AHA. The way to abort this happening will be if AHA or abolitionist societies grow for themselves. They don't sort of get into that chasm, rebuke people for just having an opinion, rebuke people for taking poor action. They say, you know what? I'm just going to let you do your thing. I'm going to abolish abortion in my way, in my style, and so on and so forth. Let's just make the coolest pro-life T-shirts. We'll have the coolest symbol. We'll have the coolest posters. And, we can get along. The other night I made a status while thinking about this. AHA would sell so many more T-shirts if we would not call people out on their failures of opinion or their failures of action. We would be popular and cool, and we would grow and grow and grow. For those of you who are not admins of the page, you don't realize this, but we lose like 10, 15 people every day. Every time that Rance Bennett makes a status, like you can tell his posters, sorry Rance, wherever you are, you can tell which his posters are. He has a particular style. Every time he makes a status poking some pro-lifer in the eye for saying that abortion is okay if they can't feel pain or something like that by implication, we lose people. We get emails saying, can I send you these drop cards back? But we could. I kid you not. I could be one rich abolitionist. And if I were a rich abolitionist, because we sold so much, and every pastor in America was like, you know what, I really like that movement, because they never tell me I'm apathetic. They say different people got different gifts. I'm going to support them in their gift. We would be rich. But you know what would be around? And what we would be supporting if we were an abolitionist industry? Abortion. There should be no professional Christians, no special calling or spiritual gift. Go ahead, Stephen. 4, loving your neighbor. Glorifying God in whose image He is made, practicing true religion, establishing justice, exposing evils, loving mercy. I'd be doing this really fast. Lighting up the darkness. I like that. That's a Bob Marley quote. Wow. This should not be like, hey, let's get some Christians to help us create a culture of dissent. We are the culture of dissent. That's what Christianity is. These Christians are turning the world upside down. That's what they say about Christians. They do not say that about Christians today unless they're putting those principles into action. So, the key to this campaign is the abolitionist societies. I hope I'm not saying something too simple when I put this point, but you are the key. taking the ideology that we will talk about later. Everywhere, bringing the gospel of God into conflict with the evil of our age. God hates nothing more than when someone who says they're preaching the gospel fails to do justice or neglects the weightier matters of the law. That's what he hates. God said it throughout the Old Testament, and then, as Emmanuel came here and said it straight to the religious leaders' faces. So, abolitionist societies, why do we exist? Where do we come from? What's the deal? We have already talked about it. We're unions of virtuous individuals getting together to bring the gospel beyond the walls of the church, beyond the books and bestsellers of Christian professors of ecclesiological wizardry or whatever it is that they're doing. That truth, what they preach, what they say, we're taking what they preach and what they say, and we are doing it. So, and we're doing it everywhere, autonomous, unified, don't have time to go into it. Bringing the light of the gospel into conflict with the darkness of abortion is the slide that I'll start on. We're going to be practicing, go ahead, 2 modes. Now I want to start with what it looks like, and then we'll get to why it looks that way. Assistance, love for our neighbor, love for our brother. 1 Peter 2:15, and Toby's going to talk much more about this tomorrow, is, shutting the mouth of evildoers by our good works. And that we're bringing assistance, helping these women, helping these families, these kids, and agitation. Abolitionist societies, we find it pretty easy to do agitation. All right? All of you, there's something that attracts you to this sort of thing. I'm not attracted to this sort of thing. I just read a lot of books. But there's something that attracts you that makes you more prone to agitation and less prone to assistance. That person at the crisis pregnancy center who thinks that you're out of your mind for showing abortion images, there's something that attracts them to that. Abolitionist societies are not supposed to be practicing either assistance or agitation. This is abolitionism. It is both salt and light. Preserve the moral depravity of the culture and light up the darkness. Instead of these 2 things, which I don't know if you've ever paid attention, I don't know if you've ever tried to wear like an AHA shirt to a Walk for Life or something like that for a crisis pregnancy center, but there's usually a fight between the assistance people and the agitation people. Abolitionist societies must be combined. The world will see you with a sign and want to throw orange juice at you, but you're going to heap some hot coals on their eyes when they also find out that there's a young, unwed mother living in your house because her boyfriend was trying to force her abortion. It's very important. Same people who are agitating must be doing those. So it's an and thing. This is what we're hearing now. Online, this is what we hear. That we're not doing anything new. Where have you been for 40 years, sort of thing that we hear online. And they'll say, actually, what you're talking about is the pro-life movement. They'll say the whole thing's the pro-life movement. We've got the assistance, we've got the agitation, which we usually keep separate, but, it's part of the pro-life movement. You do have opinion, and you do have action. It's part of the pro-life movement. And they'll say that everything that's been going on for the past 40 years has been part of that. This is where I'm slightly controversial, and I'm trying very hard to keep it in, because I just want you to consider, those of you who are new to this way of thinking. There is no pro-life movement. I'm trying to be all calm and nice. There is no pro-life movement. I don't know how to put some sugar on that. When you have 50% or more of the country against abortion, it should not be so dang hard to get one other person from your church to go to an abortion clinic. If there was a pro-life movement, if there seriously was a movement Like a movement like the movement that rose up in Alabama after they started getting organized against civil rights. If there were a movement, we would not have 40 years of complete, total legal abortion on demand. I'm going to botch this quote from Don Cooper. I may botch it really bad, so you may have to say it again later. But you would not sort of say or retain the coach of a football team who had been losing for 40 years. You wouldn't say, when Time magazine came out with an article saying, like, listen, we're doing a great job. Abortion's almost abolished. Like Planned Parenthood says, we're getting scared or whatever. And then Time magazine runs the pro-life movement is winning. We cannot count such things as... I'm trying to be so nice about the whole thing. I've tried to collect signatures for a personhood amendment. I tried to collect signatures for a personhood amendment, which I support, in Oklahoma, outside of a Christian bookseller. Outside of, it's like 1 out of 10. And they're all telling me that they were against abortion. Every once in a while, someone who's probably going in there to buy like a T.D. Jakes book or something would be like pro-choice. But the thing, I'm not slipping. But the thing is veiled Lecrae. It's getting late. Sorry. The thing is it was very, very difficult to collect those signatures because everyone had this moral opinion. We don't have a pro-life movement. We have a pro-life opinion, and then we've got like 16 people taking action. And I know every last one of them. I'm banned from half of their Facebook accounts, but you can name, like, Don Cooper knows everybody in the pro-life. If it were a movement, you wouldn't know everybody. I wouldn't be able to call Andy Moore and Troy Newman on the phone. Like, it's not a movement. To be less subtle, it was at one time that thing coming down. But instead of calling people out on apathy and calling people to action, it called them to support the pro-life movement. Sign our things, do our things, good things. It's good to send money to people in need. It's good to sign petitions against abortion. But it grew, and it was about it growing. So it grew up. It created an industry, and it supports abortion. And like William Lloyd Garrison, who said that the primary thing keeping slavery legal in this country is the American Colonization Society, and I aim to put an end to it. That is what abolitionists believe. At least this one. Why? Why do I propose and suppose that we will go down and we will make people come and take action? Why do I think that we will do it and we will not just be like the pro-life movement? Why would I invest? I didn't leave my PhD because I was failing. You know? Why? Why? Don didn't leave the engineering world because he was a bad engineer. Toby didn't. Well, that makes sense, Toby. Your job was terrible, bro. And you've been working it since up to last Friday. Why are we doing this? And why will it work? Why will we be able to bridge the gap? Because our message is one of reconciliation and repentance. We're calling people to repent of their moral opinions. We're calling people to repent of their failure to love their neighbors. The Church Repent Project, I don't know if you noticed, was kind of controversial because we were calling pro-life churches to repent of their apathy in regard to abortion, not their position. We're not going to get funding for that from churches, obviously. Why are we going to succeed? What's the difference between abolitionism and pro-lifism, for the lack of a better word? So how are we going to keep everything together and everybody basically unified in doing this work? What's our mechanism? I'll criticize like a 20-week abortion ban. or voting for Romney as if he weren't actually a pro-abort. I'll criticize those things, and then somebody will come along and they'll say, well, what's your answer, dude, or whatever? And so what's the difference? Two things. One primary thing is our ideology is different. Not by construction. Not because, the guys in Norman, Oklahoma are clever. We have a different ideology. And because it's very convoluted, we didn't just show up one day and say, like, I'd like to talk to you about the theoretical principles undergirding abolitionism and blah, 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 blah. We hid it in a really cool shape. And we sold it to people. Or put it on things that could be freely shared. We packed our ideology into our symbol, and no matter how cool the symbol was and how well liked it was, we never got rid of the ideology. When somebody said, you can't say that, you can't criticize that, you can't do this, you can't do that, pro-life leaders, when they said to do this, I said, I'm going to continue to do it. Toby, practicing the freedom of religion and protesting against Catholics who run the pro-life movement culturally, industrially, expressed his views on Catholicism, and I was told to throw him under the bus. I would not do it. Chris Rush, got a friend here. I would not do that, not only because I generally agree with what Toby's saying, except for like G.K. Chesterton, but we're also not into like controlling people top down and all these other things that are associated with the pro-life movement and saving face. And when something controversial comes out, immediatism, opposition to fetal pain laws, almost outright mockery and derision of things like saying life begins at conception and then allowing rape exceptions, stuff like that. We did that, and we always had the symbol with it. So people were throwing away their symbols, no longer sharing the symbols. We were driving around today. No pro-life organization that's major and knows what's going on will share an AHA meme, no matter how cool the phrase is. Like, the body inside your body is not your body on an ultrasound. What they'll do is they'll share that and they'll remove the symbol. Why? Ideology. It's a different ideology. I'll get a drink of water while you guys thank God that we didn't go with any of those. That one that looks like a TIE fighter is a little cooler. And at some point in time, because I was reading Isaiah and Daniel and thinking about Schaeffer's views on civil disobedience, I turned the A upside down as a reference to higher law, and then we eventually got to it. But it seems like a simple thing. We could call it a logo and grow. If we call it a symbol and let anyone who holds to an ideology adopt it and own it as their own, we will permeate and penetrate the culture and abolishing abortion. I know this because I've read about it in history. Has it worked? There you go. Reno, Burleson, Colorado, Minnesota, El Paso, Reno and Nevada. Sorry, some of these things. Various Baptist churches, Metropolitan Baptist Church, and I should give them a shout out. Abolitionism is actually happening. There are actual abolitionist societies. They are not owned, operated, or run by AHA. No one's getting monthly checks, and no one's getting like this sort of like marching orders telling you, you need to go to the clinic and do this, or you need to go to this and do that, and like no one's doing that. What AHA does is just puts the ideology out there, and you crazy lot are like, I agree with that. I'm going to go do something about it. And you end up all over the place doing all manner of things. So, like what I opened this part in, where Thomas Clarkson is encouraged, and is encouraging us to do what these wise and virtuous abolitionists of slavery did that we've spent so much time on. We are doing that. No one in here, that sort of little doohickey with the little signs going out, no one in here is in here for any other reason. I mean, well, I can't speak for all of you. Examine yourselves. But it's something that God is doing. And while I was putting together the parts, and that part I put together last night, and I was thinking, I was like, to God alone be the glory for this crazy thing that is happening, where you've got people all over the country sharing an idea, sharing an expression of that idea, practicing assistance and agitation in their local communities amidst derision, confusion, attack. Make no mistake, we are attacked. We have gone through attacks and fiery missiles from everyone except for like pro-aborts. They don't really seem to know we exist so much yet. But we are doing it. And it's not because we're cool, and it's not because we've got good leadership. It's not because we've got good leadership, but it's not because we've got all these fancy gadgets and gizmos. And let me tell you, it's not because we have any money. It's because we have a set of ideas and principles that are the subject of part 3, the last part.